Quick disclaimer before we start. Everything in this video is my own personal opinion and analysis, not financial advice, and not a recommendation to buy or sell anything. Please do your own research before making any investment decision. Hello everyone, welcome back. Today is July 18th, 2026, and we're pulling up 15 Korean stocks that are worth a closer look right now. A mix of transportation, healthcare, chemicals, manufacturing, and finance names, spanning small caps all the way up to a name carrying a market cap north of 2.5 trillion won. For each one, we'll walk through the price action, the momentum picture, and the key technical readings. RSI, MACD, volume, Bollinger Band positioning, and more. The same way any active trader or portfolio-minded investor would size up a chart before deciding whether it deserves a spot on their watch list. First up is 4445U, KSS Line, a South Korean shipping company that specializes in transporting liquefied gas cargoes, the kind of niche specialized fleet that doesn't grab headlines but quietly carries real strategic weight in the energy shipping trade. Price is 9,900 won, up 2.4% today. Trading volume here is running 114% above its recent average. A meaningful pickup in participation for a name that carries a market cap of roughly 218 billion won, comfortably in the mid-cap range for the Korean market. RSI sits at 55.1, dead center neutral, neither overbought nor oversold, which usually reads as a healthy, unforced move rather than a panic spike. MACD is positive with a buy rating, ADX at 15.8, still on the low side, meaning the trend here is young rather than fully established. Money flow index reads 73, showing real buying pressure moving into the stock. On the Bollinger Bands, price is sitting at 112% of the bandwidth, already pushing outside the upper band, after the bands themselves had compressed down to an 8.4% squeeze. That combination of a tight coil, followed by a push to the outer edge, is exactly the kind of setup that catches the eye of anyone scanning for early momentum. Average true range is a modest 3.6% of price, and roughly 58% of shares are freely floating, a reasonably liquid setup for position sizing. Second is 241590 Hwaseung Enterprise, a manufacturer that supplies components into the global footwear and apparel supply chain, the kind of behind-the-scenes industrial name that benefits quietly whenever consumer spending on sportswear and lifestyle brands picks up. Price is 3,261, up a strong 7.2% today. And here's the number that stands out on this entire list. Volume is up 911% versus its usual pace. Essentially a 10 times normal trading day. Market cap sits around 184 billion won. RSI is 49.7, right in the middle of the range despite the huge move, which tells you this stock had plenty of room to run before today's spike even started. MACD is positive, but the rating is neutral for now. ADX at 24.6 showing a trend that's gaining real definition, and MFI at 63 confirming money is flowing in, not out. Bollinger position is at 96% of the band, squeeze reading 10.3%, relative volume 3.2 times normal, an average true range of 6.2%, one of the more volatile names on today's list. Free float is 31%, worth keeping in mind for anyone thinking about position sizing on a day with this much volume behind it. Third is 263810 Sangshin Electronics, a printed circuit board and electronic components maker, the unglamorous but essential hardware layer underneath Korea's much larger consumer electronics and semiconductor industry. Price is 2,500 won, up 1.4% today. Market cap here is smaller, around 39 billion won, so this is very much a small cap name for anyone building a diversified portfolio with room for higher risk, higher reward positions. RSI reads 50.3, perfectly neutral. MACD positive with a buy rating, ADX 24.4 showing a fairly well-defined trend already in place, and MFI at 59, a moderate but positive money flow reading. Bollinger Band position is 77% of the bandwidth, with a 9.2% squeeze behind it, and relative volume running at 2 times normal, volume up 112% versus average. Average true range is 4.8% of price, and float sits at 48%, a healthy amount of freely tradable supply for a stock this size. Fourth is 004780 Daeryuk Can, a metal packaging and can manufacturer, the kind of unglamorous industrial supplier that sits quietly behind the food and beverage brands most consumers actually recognize. Price is 3,941, up 1.3% today. Market cap is around 62 billion won. RSI is 55.2, healthy, comfortably neutral. MACD is positive here with a strong buy rating, one of the more convincing technical reads on today's list. ADX is only 13, so the trend is still in its early innings, but MFI at 73 shows solid buying interest already building. Bollinger position is 76% of the band, squeeze at 7.4%, one of the tighter coils on this list, with relative volume at 2.1 times normal and volume up 83% versus average. Average true range sits at a gentle 3.0%, one of the calmer names here, and float is 51%, plenty of liquidity for active trading. Fifth is 16450, Hansae YES24 Holdings, the holding company that sits above both Hansae, a major apparel manufacturer producing for global clothing brands, and YES24, one of Korea's best-known online bookstore and e-commerce platforms. An unusual combination of businesses under one roof, which is part of what makes this one worth watching. Price is 4,371, up 4.0% today. Market cap is about 165 billion won. RSI is 55.8, MACD positive with a buy rating, ADX at 12.1, an early stage trend, and MFI at 63. Now here's the detail worth flagging. Free float on this name is only 18%, one of the tightest supplies of tradable shares on today's entire list. A low float like that means fewer shares are actually available to trade, which can translate into sharper, faster price swings in either direction. Something any risk-aware investor should factor into position sizing. Sixth is 120240, Daejung Chemicals and Metals, a producer of industrial and laboratory-grade chemical reagents, the kind of supplier whose products quietly show up across pharmaceuticals, electronics manufacturing, and research labs alike. Price is 14,351, up 1.9% today. Market cap sits around 101 billion won. RSI is 64.2, the highest reading we've seen so far on this list, leaning toward the upper half of the healthy range, but not yet flashing overbought. MACD is positive with a strong buy rating, ADX at 13.9 and MFI at 74, showing strong money flow into the stock. On the Bollinger Band's price is already at 130% of the bandwidth, pushing outside the upper band after a 9.2% squeeze. Volume is up 60% versus average, relative volume 1.9 times normal, average true range 3.5%, and float at 43%. Seventh is 036530 SNT Holdings, the holding company at the top of a Korean auto parts manufacturing group with operations spanning transmission and steering components for the broader automotive supply chain. Price is 52,000 won, one of the higher price names on today's list, up 3.4%. Market cap is a substantial 727 billion won, solidly large cap territory compared to most of the other names we're covering today. RSI is 54.8, MACD positive with a buy rating, ADX only 12.1, an early stage trend on a much bigger, more established company than most of today's list. MFI reads 64. Bollinger position is 98% of the band, squeeze at 9.3%. Relative volume 1.5 times normal, with volume up 230% versus average, a large jump in participation for a stock of this size. Average true range is 4.6% and float is 27%, on the tighter side for a company this large. Eighth is 011780, Kumho Petrochemical, one of Korea's established petrochemical producers, part of the wider Kumho corporate lineage, and by far the biggest name on today's list by market capitalization. Price is 123,501, the highest share price we're covering today, up 5.2%. Market cap is roughly 2.69 trillion won, genuinely large cap, blue chip territory, the kind of name a money manager running a diversified portfolio would recognize immediately. RSI is 53.5, MACD positive with a buy rating, ADX at 13.4, MFI at 58. Bollinger position is 97% of the bandwidth after an 11.5% squeeze, one of the widest compressions on today's list before this move. Relative volume is 1.5 times normal, volume up 137% versus average true range 5.5%, and float at 54%. Plenty of liquidity for a stock this size, which matters a great deal for larger positions. Ninth is 012790, Sinil Pharmaceutical, a Korean pharmaceutical maker, one of two healthcare names we're covering today, a sector that tends to move on its own news cycle rather than the broader stock market mood. Price is 5,391, up 3.6% today. Market cap is around 60 billion won. RSI is 56, MACD positive with a buy rating, ADX at 13.7 and MFI at 60, all comfortably in healthy, unremarkable territory. Bollinger position is 99% of the bandwidth, essentially touching the upper band after a 9.4% squeeze. Relative volume is 1.5 times normal, volume up 75% versus average true range 3.3%, and float at 63%, one of the more liquid names on today's list. 10th is 034310, NH Holdings, the parent company of one of Korea's larger credit information and data services groups, a name tied closely to the country's financial infrastructure rather than to any single product. Price is 11,941, up 3.5% today. Market cap is about 398 billion won. RSI is 54.5, MACD positive with a buy rating, ADX at 23.2, a fairly well-defined trend, and MFI here reads 80, the highest money flow reading on today's entire list, edging toward levels some traders would call frothy, worth watching for a possible cooldown even as the trend stays intact. Bollinger position is 109% of the band, already pushing well past the upper band after a 9.3% squeeze. Relative volume is 1.5 times normal, volume up 38% versus average, one of the more modest volume increases today. Average true range 3.9% and float at 33%. 11th is 054050, NH Nongwoobio, a producer of agricultural biologics and animal health products, carrying the NH cooperative lineage tied to Korea's farming and agricultural sector, a genuinely different kind of business from most of the industrial and consumer names on today's list. Price is 6,961, up 2.8% today. Market cap is around 109 billion won. RSI is 51.5, MACD positive with a buy rating. And ADX here reads 40, by far the strongest trend strength reading on today's entire list. A clear signal that this move has real directional conviction behind it rather than just noise. MFI is 61. Bollinger position is 84% of the band, squeeze at 6.8%. The tightest coil on today's list, relative volume 2.1 times normal, volume up 89% versus average true range 3.1%, and float at 42%. 12th is 267980, Maeil Dairies, one of Korea's best-known dairy and milk producers, a genuinely recognizable consumer brand name compared to most of the more industrial behind-the-scenes companies we've covered today. Price is 33,851, up a modest 1.2% today. Market cap is roughly 237 billion won. RSI is 53.1, MACD positive with a buy rating, ADX at 22.8, a well-established trend for a large, stable consumer staples name. MFI reads 76, strong buying interest for a company whose business is famously less exciting than most, which can itself be a point in its favor for more conservative, passive income-minded investors. Bollinger position is 76% of the band, squeeze at 10.5%, relative volume 1.8 times normal, volume up 95% versus average true range 3.5%, and float at 34%. 13th is 31841 Noon, Best Bristle Company, the smallest name on today's entire list by market cap, and honestly, not a household name even within Korea. It's the kind of microcap industrial supplier that only shows up on a trader's radar because of what the chart is doing today, not because of brand recognition. Price is 6,171, up a strong 5.8% today. Market cap is just around 32 billion won, genuinely microcap, small enough that liquidity and volatility both deserve extra caution here. RSI is 52.7, MACD positive with a buy rating, ADX at 25.5, a fairly well-defined trend for a stock this small, and MFI at 52, right in the middle. Bollinger position is 98% of the bandwidth after a 9.7% squeeze, relative volume 1.4 times normal, volume up 108% versus average true range 4.3%, and float at 58%. Reasonably open supply for a company this size. 14th is 050120 ES Cube, a smaller financial services name, not one of Korea's household financial brands, but its chart today is active enough to earn a spot on this list. Price is 299.25 won, up a modest 0.9% today. Market cap is around 39 billion won, another small cap on today's list. RSI is 54.2, MACD positive with a strong buy rating, ADX at a notably strong 37.5. One of the more powerful trend readings we've seen today, and MFI at 79, close to the highest money flow level on the entire list. Bollinger position is 78% of the band, squeeze at 11.3%, one of the wider compressions today. Relative volume 2.3 times normal, volume up 200% versus average true range 5.3%, and float at 40%. 15th and last for today is 271980, Jeil Pharmaceutical, one of Korea's longer-established pharmaceutical makers, a name with real history behind it compared to some of the newer, smaller companies on this list. Price is 10,391, up 4.0% today. Market cap is around 146 billion won. RSI is 49.4, the lowest reading on today's entire list, sitting right at the neutral midpoint despite the day's gain, which suggests this stock still has plenty of technical room before anyone would call it stretched. MACD is positive, though the rating here is neutral for now, ADX at 30.8, a strong, well-established trend, and MFI at 55. Bollinger position is 81% of the band, squeeze at 9.9%, and relative volume is 3.5 times normal, one of the highest on today's list, with volume up a dramatic 325% versus average. Average true range is 5.8%, the highest volatility reading on today's entire list, and float sits at 37%. A fitting name to close on, an established business, but today's chart behaving like one of the more volatile setups we've covered. Stepping back across all 15 names, a few patterns stand out. Sector-wise, this list leans heavily industrial. Several names sit in process industries, alongside 2 healthcare names, 2 finance names, and single representatives from transportation, electronics, manufacturing, and consumer non-durables. A genuinely diversified cross-section of the Korean stock market today. Volume tells its own story. Hwaseung Enterprise's 911% volume surge and Jeil Pharmaceutical's 325% jump are the 2 standouts, but almost every name on this list is trading meaningfully above its normal pace, a market-wide sign of more active participation today. And on trend strength, NH Nongwoobio's ADX of 40 and ES Cube's 37.5 are the 2 most technically convincing trends on the list, while several other names, Daeryuk Can, SNT Holdings, Hansae YES24, are still in the earlier stages of establishing their trend with lower ADX readings. Market cap spans an enormous range today too, from best Bristle companies, roughly 32 billion won, all the way up to Kumho Petrochemical's 2.69 trillion won. A reminder that this kind of technical setup can show up anywhere on the size spectrum, from microcap to genuine blue chip. Important section, please listen carefully. Every stock covered today was selected purely for its price action and technical characteristics on the day of recording. Technical readings like RSI, MACD, ADX, and Bollinger Band positioning describe what a stock's chart has already done. They do not guarantee what it will do next. Several names today also carry a lower free float, smaller market cap, or unusually high volume spike, all of which can mean sharper, less predictable price swings. This program is not investment advice. Everything shared here is for educational and informational purposes only. Always do your own research and consult a licensed financial advisor before making any investment decision. That wraps up today's walkthrough of 15 Korean stocks, from micro-cap names like Best Bristle Company, all the way up to a blue-chip giant in Kumho Petrochemical, spanning shipping, pharma, chemicals, dairy, and finance. If you found this useful for your own stock market research, please like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments which of these 15 names you'd like us to check back in on. Take care of yourselves, and see you next time as informed investors.